So I haven't done a grandma video in quite a while. And one of the reasons I haven't done it is one, because I moved from Florida to Delaware. And the other reason is because the last time I saw my granddaughter, Delta Way, she very kindly and very politely reminded me that she is growing up. And she said, you know, Grandma, I love your videos, and those stories are for little kids. So, what I thought I'd do today is do a story. First of all, I want to start by saying a couple of my grandchildren are now becoming teenagers. And first off, I want to say that being a teenager, I think, is very hard because people look at you and they think you're too little to be a child, but you're not grown up to be an adult yet. And you're kind of in between. And so it can be a confusing time just because of the way people treat you and respond to you, and yet your bodies are growing. And also, I remember being a teenager, like sometimes I wanted people to treat me like I was all grown up, but secretly sometimes inside I didn't feel all grown up and I still wanted people to protect me. So that's why it's confusing. I call it the betweens rather than the teens. And so it's okay to be confused, and I want you to know all the other teenagers are probably a little confused too, and the parents are confused, and it's just everybody's just trying to find their way through it. And it's also a very exciting time, because when we're little, we kind of socially, we socialize with, like, boys socialize with boys, girls socialize with girls for the most part. And then when we get to be teenagers, we start realizing we can socialize with the opposite gender, boys and girls and vice versa. And so we're kind of practicing at that during our teen years. So think of those as practice years because it takes a while to get those things right. So if you feel a little confused and things feel awkward in your body, that's perfectly normal. Everybody else gets confused and awkward in their bodies too. So that's what I want to say about teenagers. And I hope that helps you, Delta Ray, Sierra Jade, I'd say Robin and Logan and Haley and Michael, but I think they're coming out of that stage now, so kind of missed that opportunity to share that with them. But the other thing I thought I'd like to do is that, so many times when I do these videos, it's about a story, and I thought I'd do a real live story today. I thought maybe what I'd do is talk about your daddy when he was a little boy, because I don't think we've had those kind of stories before. You live so far away that sometimes when we're together, I'm just totally focused on you and spending time with you and in our time together. So I think today for you, and if you'd share this with Thatcher too, I think that this would be a fun story. I want to tell you about the night your daddy was born. So, Grandma was 20 years old. I hope you're much older when you have a baby. And I was 20 years old, so I was pretty young. And he was my first baby. And I could tell, I was really tiny. I could tell he was going to be a big boy because I got really big. And, when he was born, he was the only baby I had that was actually born in a hospital. My hospital experience is probably one of the reasons I decided not to do that again. But it was a lovely experience. The first time I saw his face, he was really upset and he was crying so hard. He was crying so hard. He had a little strawberry on the back of his head, and that little strawberry was just all red. It was actually pulsating. He was crying so hard. And the nurses took him and they wiped him off, and then they handed him back to me. And you know what happened? I put him up on my chest and laid his head there, and he could hear my heart beating. And just like magic, he took one big breath and he let it out, and then he went to sleep. And oh my goodness, I just knew it was the most wonderful feeling in the world being his mommy. And he was a very unique little boy. I was just thinking about this the other day. He flashed through my mind, and I thought back to when he was probably well, there's 22 months between him and his sister, Misty Rose. So he had to have been probably about a year and a half old. You know, he started talking pretty early. He was putting full sentences together by the time he was 1. And actually, maybe a little bit earlier than that. Sometimes I think I was in denial, so I wasn't like wanting to know he was talking as well as he was. But he was putting full sentences together. But I think he was about, he was walking at like 10 months. And he must have been somewhere between 12 months and 14 months old, which this is really unusual behavior for a toddler. But we had neighbors next door, and this little boy was admiring Michael's toy. And he was like, well, here, you can have my toy. He was sharing. And the reason that's unusual is usually children around that age, they kind of do what we call parallel play. And they don't like to give up their toys, and that's normal, you know. But he was willing to share his toy, you know, and it was kind of funny because back then we weren't like poor, like no food in the house kind of poor, but money was pretty tight. And our neighbors actually had, I could tell, more money than we did because their little boy had lots of toys, you know. But and the parents said, no, you keep your toy. You know, they were very sweet. But they were very impressed that he wanted to give his toy to the other little boy. And, oh, something else you don't know about your dad. We lived in an apartment. It was a fourplex. We lived on the bottom. And there was a pool outside. And, you know, back then they weren't requiring these places to have fences around the pool. So I was worried that if he ever got outside the door that he would, you know, get in the pool and not be able to swim. So he was 10 months and I taught him how to swim. I took him in. I'd seen Merv Griffin do this thing on TV. He had somebody showing people how to teach their babies how to swim. And how you did it is you'd take them in the pool and get them just above the water, and then you'd blow in their face like this. And when you blow in their face, they'd suck in air. And then you'd go underwater with them and you'd come back up. Not long enough for them to suck in water, but just long enough for them to, you know, blow that air back out that they had just sucked in. And so I did that with him over a couple of weeks, and pretty soon he was swimming. It was right before he started walking, so he was literally swimming across the pool, and he'd pull himself out and sit there and wait for me as I was coming across the pool behind him. And one day, we both went underwater, and he opened his eyes, and he saw me, and he had held his breath, but all of a sudden, these bubbles started flying to the surface. And he's just laughing because he made eye contact with his mommy. And it was just the cutest memory of him, you know. But we both came up and we were just laughing. We had such a good time. It was so funny. So anyway, I don't know why, but I thought you'd enjoy some of those stories about your daddy. What were some of the things he loved when he was a little boy? He loved to go to the playground. He loved to go swinging. He really loved talking to people. You know, he was about 2 years old. It was after Misty was born, and I can't remember what amusement park we were at. But he would just walk up to strangers and start a conversation with them. He did have a really impressive vocabulary. And he kind of taught himself how to read because Misty came along, and of course, Grandma was busy with 2 babies, and I'd been sitting down and I'd read him stories. I mean, I read him stories even when I was pregnant and he was inside my tummy, but I read him stories. And then when Misty came along, he wasn't too happy about another baby. I don't think he knew there was actually a baby in my stomach, but he was not happy about the fact that he couldn't sit right on my lap anymore because my belly was in the way when Misty was in there. But we would read stories in the morning, sometimes again at night. And when he got to be about 2.5 and was almost 3, he would spell things. He knew the alphabet, so he would spell things, and I would tell him what the word was, and it became like a game. So I didn't even realize this, but what he did was he was teaching himself how to read. So when I sat him down about 3.5, and started to help him learn how to read, he was picking up the words and reading all by himself. I mean, he was like he self-taught himself during that game. So that was pretty impressive. And then Grandma decided to homeschooling. So, for preschool and kindergarten. And so one day, I was trying to teach him math, and I was doing plus and minus. And he was just really frustrated. It was having a hard time. Well, we had a bowl of peanuts on the table. So Grandma grabbed these bowl of peanuts. And what I would do was I would walk him through it, you know, and I would have him count the peanuts when I was laying them on the table. Then I would take 2 peanuts away. Say I had 4 peanuts, and I would take 2 peanuts, and I'd say, now count those. And he'd say 2. And then I'd shove him back in, and I'd say, now count. And I'd show him plus and minus, plus and minus, plus and minus. Well, it just took a couple of times, and all of a sudden, his face just lit up. His eyes literally twinkled. And he was like, he got it. He got that concept of what plus and minus was. But, he loved to swing. He loved to get on the swing and swing, just like you do. He loved riding his bike. I mean, he was wobbly, like all kids are at first, but he was a little bit stubborn. Like, he didn't want me telling him sometimes, you know, what he needed to do it. Like, I taught Sierra how to ride her bike in about 10 minutes, but so he got up and he got on the bike and he took off, and I thought he was going to take every garbage can on the street out, but he didn't. You know, he did really good. He was wobbly, and then he learned how to ride his bike. When he got to be older, let's see, I think he was in junior high. He played basketball, and he loved basketball. I think he had to stop, though, because he was growing so fast. You know, your daddy was a big baby. He was 8.5 pounds when he was born. By the time he was 3 months old, he was 18.5 pounds. He was 23 pounds at 5 months. And what that means is he was as big as a 2-year-old at 5.5 months, or at least a 1-year-old, because they usually weigh somewhere between 12 and 15 pounds. So he was a big boy. And I don't mean fat. I mean, he was a big boy. And so I knew he was going to be a very tall man, and he is a very tall man. And so in junior high, he liked playing basketball, but his body was growing so fast that there was some kind of a condition I can't remember the name of, but his bones were literally growing faster than his muscles could stretch, so it was causing him some pain. But he loved basketball, and he liked his friends. You know, he was more of a one-on-one kind of person, but he liked having friends. He liked people, and he wasn't afraid of people. And that was something I really admired about him, because Grandma was kind of shy at times. You know, I made friends too, but I was very slow about making friends. But your dad always had a very good heart. And I was trying to think if there was anything else I could tell you about him. He was very sad, very, very sad when his dad and I got a divorce. And I know that was hard on him. And I know you've had some hard times too. All people seem to have a few hard times. I don't think anybody has a perfect life. But anyway, I thought you would enjoy that story about your dad when he was a little boy. Sometimes we don't think of our parents as ever having been little, you know. And I was thinking about Delta when she was like her and Robin. Robin's been posting pictures of her different haircuts. Your dad, what did he do? He dyed his hair black when he was a teenager. One day he came home with a mohawk, you know, and he was just trying his wings there, you know, finding himself. And I think Grandma looked at it and said, well, if you change your mind, I guess it'll grow back, you know, kind of thing. But I didn't really get angry. I was surprised, you know. And when he dyed his hair black, it was a little bit crushed because he had beautiful blonde hair. He had hair that was so thick that when he would go in the water, he'd come out sometimes and it wouldn't even be wet. It hadn't even absorbed the water yet. So, but he had beautiful blonde hair. And so I was trying to think if there's anything else I could tell you. Well, I'll probably think of it later, but if it does, I can add a story somewhere. But anyway, this is your story for today, and I promise I'll find a book to read to you that's more teenage style. There's some really good books I was thinking about. Maybe I'll put those in my next video. I'm trying to remember the name of them. One of them's called The Good Girl, and it talks about the competition between girls sometimes at school, that we don't realize that we can be they can be competitive, and so sometimes I think they classify them these days as mean girls, but really sometimes I think it's just that girls are treated so much differently in the system than boys are, that we're not socialized quite the same, boys and girls, and so it makes a big difference. But that's for another video. I love you very much. I can't wait to see you. Your birthday's coming up in a couple of months, and Grandma's going to come see you. And I love seeing you guys, so I miss you something terrible. I need to do a video now for Thatcher and for Sierra Jade, and I really hope you get to see this video. Grandma loves you. I got to move the selfie stick so I can turn it off. I love you, love you, love you, love you. Take care. Be good to yourself.